It's quite a difficult task to speak today because we are talking about the Ukrainian crisis for almost 2 years already, and every time we are returning to the very beginning, and the very beginning is the regional security, and is it changing or what we have, what is the current state, what is going on. And taking into account now how our first session is named, that is today approach to the regional security. I will start with what looks at a very theoretical question, but it is not, but it is extremely important. What does mean regional security? What region we are talking about? Even the end of the 1990s, beginning of the 2000s, we were speaking a lot, what kind of region do we have? Is it post-Soviet, or is it the Black Sea, or do we have something new? And it was mostly academic, serious discussions. Then for 5 to 10 years, we almost forgot about this. We were totally okay with what we had. And it seems to me that the current situation really raised this question again. When we speak about the regional security, what kind of region do we mean? Because from these, our perception of the threats, our perception of the responses will be completely different. If we speak about the Black Sea region, we should understand that we should incorporate the position of the countries like Turkey, for example, or Bulgaria. Or we should think also about the Georgia and Caucasus security situation, and what are the implications of the Ukrainian situation to these countries. And definitely we can't keep Russia as a part of this region, not only as the side to the conflict. However, if we're turning and speaking just about the regional security in terms of the post-Soviet space, it's more and more irrelevant because countries of the former Soviet Union from the very beginning never being the part of the same security arrangements. If we speak about the regional security from the NATO point of view, so definitely we are speaking only about the eastern flank and the perception of the NATO towards the east and the partnership, but we are dividing the member states and non-member states in their security frameworks and the possibilities for the cooperation. And the last but not the least, we can have so-called the, depends how you like it, Northern Black Sea or Western Black Sea perceptions over the security. And here we definitely will speak about Ukraine, Romania and Moldova. What are their perception of the region, of the regional security? What are their perception of the threats that we have here, and definitely what kind of responses we can have towards this security. And if to be honest, we've never had the general perception of the security in the White Black Sea. We never had the real security alliances, strategic alliances here, and we never had the real military cooperation in the region and for the region. We had some kind of bilateral arrangements, and the only really regional approach was Black Sea 4, the Navy cooperation, which was very limited and framed for the very particular topic. But even when we were trying to speak about the joint bilateral Ukrainian-Moldovan cooperation, and we were just discussing it before the beginning with my colleague, that it has never been the joint Ukrainian-Moldovan perception of the regional security. Only in case we're discussing Transnistria, which is in between, but not the more joint initiatives and possibilities for cooperation. The same if we speak about Ukraine and Romania. For many years it was popular in both countries to perceive two countries as their competitors or rivals, or in Ukraine they were political parties who liked to portray Romania even as the enemy, and that they would be the first country to brave the territorial integrity of Ukraine. So all these stereotypes and myths in the relations were extremely popular among those people who didn't want to speak about the possibilities and perceptions of the regional security and what can it be. It was easier to speak about economics. It was easier to speak about the projects as the Black Sea highway ring, for example. It was easier to speak about the so-called frozen conflicts, because they were something traditional for the regional security, but not perception of any other kind of possible threats and possibilities for the cooperation. And because of this, we are coming to the another question, and that is, we also for many years discussed who are security providers who are security consumers in the region and in our relations. And most of the countries of the, especially northern Black Sea, were perceived as the security consumers because they are not stable, because they are not very well developed, because the democratic development is still under the issue, and so on and so on. However, when the crisis happened, for the last 2 years, we can see that nobody can name security providers, because nobody was ready really to guarantee and to react and to address the threats that appeared, and even to make the real, let's say, screening of the security situation in the region. It was still the individual countries making their own screening for their own national security, rather being able to take any kind of the regional responsibility for the security situation. Even Turkey, that for many years have been seen as some kind of leader, at least the initiator of the projects, starting from the BSAC and to others, we can't name it as being interested in the security because for the last 5 years they turned their attention more to the let's say to the north or to the east, depends how you look to the map, so to the Middle East and to the problems happening there, rather than to the Black Sea and the partner countries over there. And probably only after the airplane incident between Russia and Turkey, we can say that Turkey is returning back to the Black Sea security more attentively, not only securing the clauses of the Montreal Convention and how it can be implemented in the region, but looking a little bit wider to the situation happening here. And even NATO, it has never been a real part of the Black Sea, and we were discussing just 1 month ago here in Bucharest, before the Eastern Flank Summit, that NATO was not allowed to be in the Black Sea. Definitely it had 3 member states at the littoral stage of the Black Sea, but even the simplest active endeavor operation has never been allowed to be part of the Black Sea, to be spread to the Black Sea region, because Turkey were again thinking that Russia, Turkey and other Black Sea countries can have their own responsibility about their region. As a result, we had not involvement on the one hand, and on the other hand, not interest, the real interest in the affairs, not the strategy towards the region over here. And from this, let's say, background, we can come to the next question. Has Ukraine's crisis changed the situation or not? And it seems to me that we can say that it is a change of the threats perception. We finally started to speak about the threats more openly, wider, and it's not only this myth of the hybrid war, because I really like the phrase of the professor that neither they new nor Russian. All these threats that we're witnessing now, they are as old as the world, they are just developed better, they are just widely implemented, but information war, creation of the needs, trade disputes, economic sanctions, the manipulation of the gas as the tool of the foreign policy. We saw it for many years before in the region. It is just the scope of all these methods used during the Ukrainian crisis that made them more vivid for the experts. And definitely that they are going in parallel with the military actions that my colleague from the embassy just described quite well. So the problem is that we definitely started finally to understand what are the threats, and that these threats are not purely threats against Ukraine, that many of these threats are transnational. Because when we speak about the information war, and for the last 1.5 years, me with my colleagues, we were screening the perception of the gossips and how gossips are influencing the security situation on this Odessa region. And what we really noticed, and now we are finalizing yet one research about the sources of information, that most of the gossips in our region are transnational. even if the idea is to send them only to the Moldovan villages in Odessa region, immediately you can find these gossips across the border in Moldova or in Transnistrian territories. The same about the gossips that started circulating there, they're coming back. As for example, one of the very popular last summer, that as soon as Saakashvili became the governor of Odessa region, the best gossip was that immediately tomorrow he should start the military operation against Transnistria. He's already running. He's not still in Odessa, but he's already running on the top of the tank to Transnistria to occupy it and to change Chechuk authorities. At the same time, so in Transnistria, they were completely aware of this, they were sure, and many of the villages on the border were preparing that forces should come. At the same time, in Ukraine, in Odessa region, people in the villages were gossiping that because Saakashvili came to prevent this, Transnistrian 8 tanks tomorrow is starting their operation against Odessa region, and then they are already on the march. Nobody was thinking how effective this tanks. The tanks are never going on the march for 100 kilometers. That was all for the military experts. But for the media, for the villagers, they were discussing it extremely seriously, and they were preparing for the start of this military operation, either from Odessa or from Tiraspol side. So you can imagine that even such a small thing are quite easy for the destabilizing of the social pattern, for the psychological environment there. Because when people are under the fear, it is much easier to manipulate by that. That is much easier to make them believe in one or another thing, or even prepare for the attack. Because we witnessed for a few times how people, the heads of the village councils were evacuating the whole villages because they just heard that one of the military vehicles are moving around for some transportation reasons. But why I was showing this, that we started to speak about threats, but we are still not speaking about reaction. There is still no regional approach to how to address, and we are still in the individual approaches to these issues. We are still discussing more about the migrant crisis. We're still discussing the change of the NATO security strategy, should it be or not in Warsaw. But we are not speaking about the countries themselves and what can be here on the level of, let's say, between NATO and non-NATO countries. Because definitely if you have Georgia and Ukraine with the NATO aspiration, even on a different level, but at least with some kind of aspiration, we have Moldova with a neutral status and without these NATO aspirations. So does it mean that if we find some kind of the format for cooperation between Ukraine, Georgia and NATO, that Moldova should be just forgotten from these cooperation models that can be developed? So coming to the conclusion as for now, so not to occupy the whole time that we have, I really would like to more to raise the questions for our discussion, because it is not the university lecture, and I hope that we will have the comments and discussion from the room as well, that what kind of region do we need to speak about security? How wide or narrow should it be? Do we have any kind of general approach to the security, or do we still afraid to speak about all scope of the threats and the possibilities for development of the situation? Is Ukraine's crisis is something singular, or should it be seen as just a first step for the more wider destabilization of the regional security situation? Will it bring the new developments for the whole European security, or will it be just a threat for the other post-Soviet space, or still in the framework of so-called sphere of the interest of the Russian Federation? If you read their military doctrine, where back to 2010 they said that in case Ukraine and Georgia is going to join NATO, they will use any means, and when you say any means, you mean any means, to prevent prevent this from happening. So definitely, how can we speak about the future of the regional security if for the present we can't identify the common approach to it and the common perspective to the threats and to the reaction and to the perception of the scope of the security and the threats for the region. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.